What's good, YouTube? In today's video, we're going to be playtesting the Sauron Precon. Keep in mind, guys, when I was doing the review for this commander deck, Sauron costs 8 mana to play, and I really think that because he costs 8 mana to play as a beginner, I really suggest that you don't play Sauron as the commander. So we're actually going to play this test with Saruman as the commander for this deck, mostly because Sauron says that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you amass orcs, or you're going to create just big buff tokens, and there's a lot of non-creature spells inside this deck, so I feel like this card works better for this deck than this one. So we've shuffled, we're going to draw 7, and let's see what we get. We have Subjugate the Hobbits, Merciless Executioner, Arcane Denial, Land, Distract from Darkness, and Consider, which is a pretty decent opening hand here. Actually, we're gonna keep this, and then we'll start. So we're gonna draw into a Null Spine Dragon, which is a 7-cost dragon here, which we're not gonna play anytime soon. So that'll go to our hand. We'll just go ahead and play this island, and then we'll tap the island to cast the Consider. Consider is going to allow us to surveil one and then draw a card. So we can look at the top card of our library, and then if we don't like it, we can put it in the graveyard. Otherwise, we would draw this card. And I think we only have one more land in our hand that we need to hit another land. So I'm just going to choose to put this card in the graveyard. It does have flashback, so we can cast it again anyway. So we're going to go ahead and draw a card. We draw a mountain. Perfect. We'll draw into a Sulphur Falls. We do control an island here, so we're just going to go ahead and play this Sulphur Falls, and then we're just going to pass the turn here. Let's say our opponent casts some type of spell on their turn. We'll tap 2 and we'll cast an Arcane Denial, which will counter their spell. And my opponent's going to draw 2 cards during my turn, then I'm going to draw an extra card during the next turn. So I'm gonna untap and we'll draw into a swamp here, which is pretty cool. So we'll go ahead and play that swamp. We're gonna go ahead and let's say somebody played a creature. We'll tap 3. We'll play a Merciless Executioner. When this enters the battlefield, each player is going to sacrifice a creature, which we're going to sacrifice itself. So that'll go to the graveyard, and then we'll pass. I do like that we did have like 2 removal spells here, which is pretty nice. Essentially, I think removals is very strong when you talk about playing commander. We have Shellub, the Dreadweaver, which is a card that technically we can play on this turn. So the thing though is we want to get our commander onto the battlefield. So we'll tap 4. And we're going to play Saruman on turn 4 and not, Sauron on turn 8 with 8 mana, right? So Saruman's in the game, and then we'll just pass. We'll untap. We'll draw into another swamp. So what we can do right now is put a land into play. What I want to do here is to play that card with flashback in our graveyard. So we're going to tap 4 here, and we're gonna cast the Lidless Gaze. So exile the top card of each player's library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards and cast mana of any type can be spent to cast them. This costs 4 mana to play, so we're gonna amass orcs 4. So we're gonna get an orc army. This is going to get 4 +1/+1 counters on it. And then we're going to exile the top card of our own library, which is a mountain. So we'll just keep that up here because we can play that next turn. And then we'll go ahead and pass. This card is now exiled. This does have ward 2, so our opponents have to cast spend 2 more mana to target this with a spell. We'll untap. We'll draw into a Voracious Fell Beast, which is a creature that's going to create a food and sacrifice creatures. Which is more removal, which is pretty nice, honestly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana here. So we could play that Fell Beast if we wanted to. But I think we just keep doing the Saruman thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll play... We could have a little combo here where we could play Shellub this turn, which says that whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, we exile it. So I think instead of just, you'll see, we'll play Shellub this turn, which is gonna force our opponents to exile their creatures. We'll play this as our land for turn as opposed to that land inside of our hand because we exiled that card. And you know, we're gonna do what we do with the orcs because we don't care about the orcs. We're just gonna attack with the orcs. And then if our opponent decides to block and their creature dies, it would be exiled, so they're probably just going to take 4 damage. And then we'll pass, we'll untap, and we'll draw into a Path of Ancestry. I think we'll play the Path of Ancestry tapped just to get that into the game. And then we're going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll play an Extract from Darkness. So each player is going to mill 2 cards, so we'll mill 1. Fire Inscription, that would have been good to have, and a Relic of Sauron. Fire Inscription, whenever we cast instant or sorcery, we're going to deal 2 damage to each opponent, which would have been nice as Saruman being the commander. But then I return a creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield, and because we have the only graveyard here, we're going to grab the Merciless Executioner. And as the Merciless Executioner enters the battlefield, first of all, we have to add 5 +1/+1 counters to the Orc army, so I'm going to leave this dice right here. That's 5 more counters, so this Orc army is a 9/9. Each player is going to exile a creature because they died while Shellub is in play. And now we have a 9/9 that we're attacking for after we exiled our opponent's creatures. And then we would pass after this. We'll untap, right? We'll draw into Grima, Saruman's Footman, which is a card that has unblockable and cast spells. So we'll put this into our hand. We'll play a land for turn. And I think we have enough land, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yep, to play a Subjugate the Hobbits, which says gain control of each non-commander creature with mana value 3 or less. So all the small creatures that were left on the board after our Merciless Executioner, we're going to take. But more importantly, because this costs 7 mana to cast, we're going to put 7 more counters onto our Orc army. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, then we'll add 3 counters here. So 1, 2, 3, this is 6, 12. This is a 15 power Orc army, and we just took all of our opponent's creatures essentially, or most of them, if it fulfilled what that card's asking for. And then we'll attack with this 15, 15, and a whole bunch of other creatures. And now you're kind of getting the idea for how this deck is going to play, right? We'll untap. This does kind of have, not really hexproof, but kind of like hexproof. And we just kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again. I can cast the Voracious Fell Beast here to force our opponents to exile their creatures because Shellub is in play, because this is forcing them to sacrifice creatures. And we just keep going until we draw more. Deep Analysis, right? The buff this. We're getting the benefits of this. We're buffing a creature that we can attack with while we're removing creatures from the board. Like I said, this deck is probably going to be playing a lot better and much more smooth if you have Saruman as the commander. So if I were you, I would just take Saruman and make him the commander of the deck. If you plan on keeping Sauron as the commander of this deck, I would just suggest that you find more cards that give you more mana, like cards like this Commander Sphere, which is going to allow you to ramp a certain amount of mana so that you can get Sauron onto the battlefield. Because Sauron does cost 8 mana, and 8 mana in this deck where there's not too many mana rocks feels like an eternity waiting to cast a creature. So I would just advise against playing this if you're really wanting to win a game. If you want to have fun, you can go ahead and do this. I just think if you want to win and compete, not that you can't, I just think you have better chances with Saruman, okay? Always remember, eat healthy, work out every single day, everybody. Most importantly, you guys got to remember to believe in yourself, all right? Peace out, people.